Welcome to Yeukai Business Show, UK's premier business show where we feature business thought leaders, high achievers, and industry experts. Today's episode is brought to you by World Outsourcing Solutions Limited, a company that specializes in helping executive business owners with virtual assistant services and business growth systems. Here's your host.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I'm Trevor Stockwell, and a guest for this episode is Jamie. Jamie's been named by Yahoo Finance as one of the top 10 mum entrepreneurs to watch for in 2021. But she started her six-figure business at age 15 and is now on a mission to revolutionize the way that entrepreneurs handle their businesses. Why? To free up their time for the things that are more important. One of the ways she does this is by helping them implement systems and automate processes so that their businesses run seamlessly without them being there. Now, that sounds interesting to me. I'm definitely eager to learn more, and I'm sure you are as well. So get ready, take some notes. Welcome to the show, Jamie Kullman.
Thank you so much for having me. I am beyond excited to have this conversation today.
It's brilliant. No, it's great to have the opportunity to delve into your wisdom, your life experiences as well within business. From age 15, that's impressive. Yes, you're not 16 now, are you? So you've had quite a bit of experience in business since then. But maybe just share a little bit more about that. Were you the first sort of entrepreneur within the family, or is it genetically there, or have you got influences around?
You know, it is nothing my family knew anything about, actually. So I was the first one. And I don't know. I always knew growing up that I was very different from my peers. They all knew what college they wanted to go to. They knew what type of career they were going to follow. And I never knew. I had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. And when I turned 15 years old, a company that I had been working for actually had been keeping automotive parts in a warehouse. And I remember seeing these guys get done on their routes, just throwing all these parts away. And I was shocked. I'm like, first off, I'm very environmentally friendly, so I wasn't okay with that. And what I did was I started throwing them up on eBay for 99 cents each, just to see what would happen. Well, I just remember my whole family and I were actually sitting there watching a movie, and my phone kept going cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. And these hubcaps were getting bid up to hundreds of dollars. And in that moment, I was like, okay, I'm onto something. I ended up buying the whole warehouse from the guy for $500. Like, this is how this started. And then from there, if I ever saw any of the guys throwing things away in the dumpster, I would literally hike myself up under the dumpster, and I'd be dangling in there, pulling the products out to list them up online. So that was how I got started. Not so beautiful. I'd be literally on the ground, on my hands and knees with grease, black grease, just all over my clothes, all over my body. And I'd be cleaning these parts off. And that was years ago, right? 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And I still run that business today.
Oh, right. Wow.
Yeah.
So you're not getting your hands dirty now, are you, I guess?
Nope, I am not. And that was actually my first hire was somebody to actually ship for me for that business. And the moment I did that, it changed everything for me. And I started to realize that all of that time that I had been spending before cleaning these parts, I mean, my back, it killed my back. Doing all of this manual labor, shipping things, dealing with customer support, I realized that I was missing so much time with my family. I moved at the home at the time. And I started to realize at such a young age that time was something that was really valuable with the people that I loved. Yeah. And I do believe that has lined me up to be where I am today.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that sounds interesting. I didn't realize you were still running that as well today. So that's really good.
Yes, it is.
It's good that you mentioned it in the start that initially you put the hard work in as well, isn't it? There's no magical formula to running your own business, really, is there? It starts with hard work. But then from what you've sort of said, you then learn and get to the point where actually I need to get a better balance within, what I spend on my business and in my business, really. Yeah, which makes a lot of sense. We'll dive into how you do that in a moment, really. But let's touch to start with on mindset, because I'm guessing, correct me if I'm wrong, but the mindset shift has to happen before we then start systemizing and automating certain processes or outsourcing and things like that. What was that just a natural progression that actually I need to change the way I'm looking at this because I want to be at home with my family and I'm actually still working? Or was there a conscious point where you sort of drew a line in the sand and said, right, I need to change? How did that work for you?
Yeah, well, for that business, I moved. I moved. So I was no longer around my product where I was able to ship it out. And I started an Amazon FBA business at the time as well. And so Amazon really showed me that by having other people do fulfillment for you, you really just sat there and were able to reap the rewards and then also help people in that way without getting your hands as dirty, right? So from Amazon, I feel like I used my knowledge in that way and put that towards the business that I had run previously. And then from there, so I know we're moving on to now business number 3 is more of the coaching realm that I'm in right now and like coaching consulting.
Yeah.
And what happened there is I was really trying to figure out what this business would look like. And in doing so, I ended up, I mean, you guys, there's YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, podcasting, YouTube's. And when you put down all of the work that needs to be done on every single one of these platforms, not even including things like a website or actually doing work with your clients, right? There's just so many moving pieces as a business owner. And so it was really like the past year, I've been really heavily focused on how to remove myself from the trenches of this new business to really like step into this next level, which is me showing up and making myself better and stronger and getting rid of the rest. So that's more of the aim that I'm in now, because that other stuff is running without me, which is also, you know, part of this journey, which I would love to open up about too. But the main focus that I've had lately is on the coaching side.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Now, I know everybody listening, I would have thought, is going, okay, where do I start? How would I, because what you're saying, it sounds perfect. You've obviously made it work for you and you then help other people do that. What would be some of the first steps that people need to think about and start to implement, or maybe get to the point where they're then ready to let go of certain elements to other people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I do believe that it comes down to really getting clear on your current reality. Because if you're okay working 70 hours a week, you're going to be okay working 70 hours a week. You're not going to have any motivation to change. So I think it's getting really clear. Am I actually living in tune with why I started this business? Or if you're listening to this and you're feeling like you're a bit self-employed, and you're like, oh, I actually do say I work from home or I work for myself, then that's a red flag. Because in reality, if you circle back to why you started your business, it was most likely for time and financial freedom on the surface level, right? So ask yourself, do I really have time freedom or am I working too much? Like if you're staying at home right now to be with your kids, are they running into the office at 2 p.m. and you're yelling at them because they're interrupting your workday? Because if you think about that, that's probably not why you wanted to stay home with your kids. You wanted to be present with them. But what I've realized with a lot of my clients is that they're not present with their family because they're so in the trenches of their business that they basically shut out. And I'm so guilty of this, you guys. I shut out the rest of my world for a long time and just put my head down saying I was in the build phase. But if you don't realize that you've got to get out of that build phase at some point and realize that you really can't show up powerfully unless you make a change. So first step would be really getting clear on your current reality and then coming up with an action plan to actually help you stay in your zone. I call it your zone of impact. You guys may have heard it as zone of genius, but it's finding ways and getting clarity on what actually lights you up every day. Like we're podcasting right now. This is my zone of impact. I would never outsource this. Like that would be crazy, right? Because I genuinely love doing it. So it's figuring out what that thing is or things, right, are for you.
Yeah.
And then learning how to delegate, eliminate, and automate the other things.
I like that. Three simple words there, but there's a lot in those words, definitely. But no, I like that. And also just mention, you've actually started a podcast as well, haven't you? The Mum's Freedom Maker podcast.
Yep, Mom's Freedom Maker podcast.
That's good. Yep. Yeah, no, I like all that. So big fan of podcasts for that very reason. It's a way of chatting to people, a way of getting your message out, isn't it? Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And you're right. In some ways, like there are lots of different spinning parts to running a business well, whether you're a one-man band as such a sole trader, or you've got several staff, or maybe you're bigger than that, or multiple businesses. And it really is unhooking from the I have to do it all, whether your name is the main brand or not. I have to do it all because I need to make sure everything happens, and then just coming back, like you say, get clarity on what am I actually gifted at, what are the things, because I think a lot of it is we get passionate about a cause and how we want to live our lives. You're right, but then if the time that we spend on our business is not spent doing the things that bring us alive, then we're missing a chunk of freedom, a chunk of the right sort of experiences that we want. And if we're in our zone of genius, as you said, the people that we're serving get the best version of us, don't they? I think that's the key thing. If we're too busy thinking of lots of other stuff that we're not really good at, but it needs to happen, then yeah, we rob the potential that we can give to other people as well. So yeah, totally understand where you're coming from on that. So,
and then think of, think of like a to-do list, for example. Like if you're the type of person who's writing out a to-do list every day of things you've got to do inside of your business, what happens is that when you're feeling most maybe inspired, you might sit down like, okay, I'm feeling like I need to work right now. So you'll look at this to-do list, and yes, you could start checking things off of it, but the to-do list typically isn't things like within your zone of genius. And so what's happening is you're draining all of your energy on these tasks that in reality somebody else could do for you, because there's just so many things to do, where it's all about really eliminating that to-do list by delegation, and then using that time when you're feeling inspired, taking inspired action to do the things you're meant to do.
Yeah, that makes sense. Say those three words again. So eliminate, delegate, automate. Okay, was that the right order? Eliminate. So get rid of the stuff that you know you don't need to do, then start delegating the stuff that isn't your strongest points or the things that bring you alive, and then automate. Okay, we could talk for hours on those.
Yes, we could.
Maybe just briefly, let's just touch on all three areas with maybe one nugget of wisdom or an experience that you've had or a challenge you've overcome or something like that will help sort of unpack that for people listening.
Yes. So I have a lot of people actually ask me, okay, I want to automate, I want to delegate, I want to eliminate things. Where do I start? Because there's just so much to do. And so what I recommend people do is basically write down what they do in a single day. Even something like checking your email, like basically every 30 minutes, have an alarm go off that has you stop and write down, okay, what did I do for the past 30 minutes? Write it down. Time block, basically what you did for the entire day. And then what I want you to do is have a chart in front of you that is broken into 4 different quadrants. Okay. So one of these quadrants is going to say, which, use whatever verbiage speaks to you, but it's going to say, I like doing this and it lights me up. That's one quadrant. I like doing this, but it doesn't light me up. I don't like doing this, but it lights me up. I don't like doing this and it doesn't light me up. Okay, so then what you're going to do is you're going to take that long list of all the things that you do on your typical workday, and you're going to put them into those quadrants. So then obviously what you're going to do from there is you're going to take the list that you don't like it doesn't light you up at all. It's basically the tasks that you shouldn't be doing. So that's where you'll focus first. So that should just give you a little bit of action steps for today. Yeah. So take that quadrant. That's what you should look at first. And it's pretty easy to decide what should be eliminated first. I mean, maybe you're checking your email 3 times a day. Something like that's easy to cut down. That's not really necessary, right? Say, okay, maybe all my emails are coming in at 4 p.m. that are important. I'm not sure, it varies for everybody, but you could say, okay, well, now I'm just going to check my email at 4 p.m. So you just eliminated your other 2 right off the bat, right? And then it's going down the list. After you eliminate, okay, what are you going to delegate to somebody else? And then what can be automated with a system that basically you're removed from? It's like think of it as an electronic virtual assistant, basically. What could you set up that's just going to work without you?
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I mean, outsourcing. So Yeukai does the outsourcing side of things as well. I know I've kind of had a close eye, because we're close friends anyway. I've seen how he's operated for many years, and I can see the benefit of him leveraging time for some of his team, frees up his time using his team as well, and how he then helps others with it. So it makes a lot of sense. Not that that's an advert, but it makes perfect sense that there are people out there that can do the everyday stuff that needs doing, and there are some good opportunities out there to get the right people that know what they're doing, and they can do it cheaper than what you can if you equate your time to money as well. There's other ways of utilizing your time. So yeah, that all makes perfect sense to me. Hopefully for everybody listening as well, people are sort of thinking, yeah, actually 4 quadrants, I'm definitely going to do that. I did a very briefly share this, did an exercise a few years ago of just about recording how much time I spent within a day over a period of a week to start with, on certain categories, not necessarily within business, but just different areas. What's my work-life balance like? Am I getting a certain amount of sleep? What am I doing socially with family and friends, things like that? And it's just a really good eye-opener. I then extended it and kept doing it because I like spreadsheets, and that kind of appealed to me. But the insight of it was really useful. And I found actually there are certain bits that I do need to change slightly. So with the quadrant that you suggest, I think that's brilliant. If people haven't done that, definitely do that, because when you put it down on paper or in electronic form, you're looking at it, and then it's easier to realize, yeah, why am I spending that much time looking at emails, or almost getting pulled from the things that I want to focus on by other people's priorities, which aren't necessarily the things that I should focus on.
That's spot on, because they really are just distractions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
So
the interesting part too is I always hear too how it's going to be too expensive.
Yeah.
To get rid of those things, but in reality, it's too expensive not to, because you don't have the time or mental capacity to take on all of those other tasks.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And there's other people that can do it in a fraction of the time because they're wired that way, aren't they? They're gifted, so it's not going to take them necessarily as long as you. So there's the trade-off that side as well, which is good. But until you start exploring, you have to change your mindset and approach to even think about that before you then discover, actually, maybe it's not as bad as what I thought, or there's a lot more I can leverage than I first realized. So that all makes perfect sense to me, definitely. So let's touch on the automating part of things. For everybody, whatever business that they're running, everything you shared so far works across, whether it's products, whether it's services, or a blend of both. And I'm guessing the automation, there's certain things that will be specific to whatever the type of business they are, but there's a lot of different things that are just general, this will work for everyone. So if it isn't Amazon necessarily, and we're not affiliates, if Amazon would like to pay us lots of money for mentioning them, brilliant. Hasn't happened yet, but they're a really good example of a process that people would have heard of, where Amazon will ship the stuff that we sell. But how did you then progress from that to something more personally for your business, really?
Yeah, there are really good CRM platforms, but I think it's more, if you're listening to this right now, really think to yourself, what tasks am I repeating again and again and again on a weekly basis that I have a process for? And it might involve you actually writing down what this process looks like. A lot of these exercises might involve some hard, like putting your nose down and saying, okay, this is what I'm actually doing each week. But like for me, for example, onboarding a client, or like that's one example of something that you could automate, or actually guest podcasting. Okay, I'll give that example since we're on a podcast right now. So rather than me going back and forth with a guest to, usually I get them to apply. After they apply, they have to receive a commitment from me, right? They get to schedule. These are all just emails back and forth that end up eating a lot of time, rather that be 30 minutes each person or an hour, right? But what's neat is now all I do with the click of one button, the whole thing is automated, right? I even have questions within my application form. If they answer the wrong way, it's going to send them an email saying now's not the right time. But if they answer it correctly, they're going to get into my pipeline that puts one thing after the next. They get everything from my scheduler to submitting headshots to letting them know an hour before the episode goes live. They even get follow-up materials afterwards. Like, there's so much in the world now that would allow you to automate your processes, no matter what type of business you're in. It just is going to involve you maybe figuring out what type of process you need to automate, and then finding a type of CRM that would do it for you. And then, yeah, it's going to take a few hours to set it up, but there's probably an email that you copy and paste each time. There's probably a contract you copy and paste each time. If you're having to redo things like that, it's cutting into your day and it's distracting you from what matters. So it's finding ways to automate the processes you're already doing.
Yeah. Within the podcast here, we've used a certain process for a good few years, and now we're just in the process of changing that to something that's a bit more, well, just more fit for purpose now. One of the things I like about what you're saying with the getting the right process in place is also it's then scalable, isn't it? So if, say, you're setting up a podcast and you have 2 guests a month, you can manage that quite easily with a few emails maybe, or a couple of hours of a VA per month. Then when you get to the point where you're doing 10, maybe, I don't know, a week, a month, however you want to do it, once you've got a process in place, it makes so much sense to then set them on that. The process then looks after them to all the points where you don't need the direct human contact. I think most people nowadays, yes, there's an importance to relationship building with the personal touch when you're communicating, but until you get to that point, most people, realize that there's processes in place, because you need to see if it's a good fit, isn't it? Like, if you're spending too much time with somebody, actually what they're talking about isn't going to hit your podcast audience, then you're not doing them any favors and they're not doing you any favors. You're wasting time which you could be spending talking to a guest that is going to help your audience. So it makes perfect sense. It's really nice to hear the way you've said it, because I think there's parts where we can all think, yeah, I know that makes sense, but, and then for whatever reason, it's like we have a reason why we're not doing that. It's like, yeah, that's fine for Jamie. It's like, yeah, she's good at helping clients, but it wouldn't work for me. And it's like, well, until you actually try it, how do you know it's not going to work? Or if you did try it and it didn't work out as well as what you'd hope, that's what consultants are for, isn't it? That's what coaches are for, just to get you back on track to thinking, actually, you can do it, and explore different ways of how that can happen. Yeah, so that makes a lot of sense. So any specific tips on certain apps that you think would work well for any of the listeners out there?
There's a few. So Dubsado, Honeybook, those are really good places to start. But I mean, it really, like, if you think about it this way, it makes it so rather than working inside of your business, pushing the buttons and pushing the paper, so to speak, like, each time I go back and revisit my workflows and my pipelines, it's to make them better.
Yeah.
Like, oh, shoot, I wish the email would have told them this. So I'll go back in and I'll add that in there, but I'm not doing anything else. So it gives you so much more mental space to say, okay, how can I improve this system rather than do the system?
Yeah. Once you've got it ticking along, you can then tweak it and kind of enhance it in different ways. It's like, right, that's taken care of. Wouldn't it be really good if we did this? Now we've got time to do that. We can add that in to the process. Yeah, it makes sense. And if you look out with outside sort of entrepreneurs and small businesses, fast organizations, they all rely, successful ones rely on processes, people operating those processes. The CEO isn't down on the factory floor getting their hands dirty, are they? You need somebody above it to then be able to see all the moving parts, to then spot what needs tweaking, what needs changing. This bit's working fine, let's keep doing that. We're not actually really making use of that. Let's get someone on board for that. Yeah.
That's where I think the problem is with and there's nothing wrong with being a solopreneur, right? It's okay. But that's where I think there's a big problem in the industry these days, especially with so many online businesses popping up, because people are doing it to make money, and they get scared, right? When it comes to automation, a lot of people think, we're getting to delegation in a minute, but they think delegating means you have to have hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank or something before you can give yourself the right to break up with a portion of your business. And that's why this has been such a revolutionary thing for me, right? I was doing that. I found myself working, oh my gosh, 12 hours a day in this business and still spinning my wheels, just frustrated. And this was prior to obviously changing the way that I do things. And a lot of it had to do with me becoming pregnant and having my son, realizing that the way that I did business when I was home alone all day long is not going to work anymore. Right now he's napping, so it's perfect. This is great, right? It's a time for me to show up, but when he wakes up, I like to be present with him so we can go out and do things. And so it's really been a shift. That was a lot of the mindset shift that happened for me to make me realize that the business that I had no longer works with the life that I have and want to have moving forward. So I think that's a big one. And I'm sure we're getting into delegation now, probably my favorite part.
Absolutely, yeah. Go on. It's a good way to wrap it up. Actually,
I
we've
would
got a few
love
more minutes, but yeah, let's definitely dig into delegation.
Okay, yeah. So delegation, oh my gosh, I've been realizing over the past even few weeks that it's something that I'm actually pretty good at. And really what has made me better, I would say, is the fact that we did just move off of Maui and we've been in vacation mode a bit after we packed up 2 suitcases each, got rid of everything else. We've been realizing that we really needed to spend time exploring again. And in doing so, every time I sit down to get any type of work done, rather than me being inside of the business, right? And this is something that I talk about often, but this was an experience where I fully got to live this. Rather than me being inside of the business, I was sitting here like, okay, what would I do in the business today if I sat down to do it? Rather than me taking action on that, I documented my process. I recorded a quick video of me doing a similar activity, and then I gave it immediately to my assistant. And so that's just like something that I think mentally needs to shift for everybody, rather than you doing it because, oh, I do it better, or somebody won't do it and have it done in time, or whatever excuse might come through your mind when it comes to delegation. It's saying you just have to learn how to delegate correctly.
Yeah.
And that involves you just being very specific about what you want and not doing it. You have to be hands off, kind of let your people underneath you run your business like it's their own.
Yeah.
That's really important.
Yeah. The more you empower your team around you, the stronger the whole business is, really, isn't it? Because then you can rely on them to do it. I think, yeah, some of the challenges for delegating, it's the fear, isn't it? Well, they're not going to do it as well as me. It's like, maybe they don't have to do it the same way that you would do it. Maybe they'll come up with a smarter, more efficient way. You won't know until you give them the opportunity. But then it's also, you like you say, communicate it in the way that they need to grasp it, so they know what you need. What does good look like, really? That's what we want. But then it's also leave them to it. It's like, don't be bothering them every few minutes to see how's it going. It's like, well, I would have finished it if you hadn't kept bringing me up and things like that. As business owners, it's easy to keep our hands too tightly around certain things, I think, and it just doesn't help. You're right. Definitely learn to delegate, and that works in the home as well, in the right sort of ways, because we can't all do everything, but it's a team, isn't it? That's the way I look at it. I think there's so much power in teams that people don't utilize because we try and do it ourselves a lot of the time, but that's another discussion, another topic. You also help people. We haven't got time to dig into this now, but just you help people with creating sort of digital products, don't you? So that it all then helps them become a step towards omnipresence, maybe we'll put it that way, where they can reach a lot more people than just the one-to-one, depending what the nature of the business is. So that would be really good. Maybe at some point you're able to come back and dig into that. But just for people that are listening, what would be the best way for them to sort of touch base? Even if it's just hey, I need to listen to more of what Jamie's saying, check out her podcast as well. I want to unpack it a little bit. For some reason, sometimes when you try and change your mindset, you need to hear some things a few times before you really do it. I ponder stuff a lot if I'm going to make major changes. I know some people are very quick, but other people need a bit more time. So for people that want to check out more of what you do, what's the best way for them to find you?
Yeah, so if you're listening to this and you're ready to reclaim 10 hours a week for the things that you love, or you're feeling like you need to get into more of a work-life flow, definitely check out my podcast, Mom's Freedom Maker Podcast. I would love to have you over there. Or if you're interested in having a work-life flow assessment session with me, I am going to gift this to you for anybody who rates and reviews this show. Just simply take a screenshot of you doing this and email it over to contact@momsfreedommaker.com, and I will set you up with a work-life flow assessment.
Wow, that sounds good. And does that involve the quadrant that you spoke about?
Oh, yeah. And we'll also get into a lot more of how to make the work and life flow together, and how you can really just use this to just propel your passions forward and get rid of the things that you shouldn't be doing.
That sounds good. For everybody listening, I mean, what could you do with an extra 10 hours? Maybe that would be difficult to answer straight away. Maybe you've not really thought that deep about it, but 10 hours a week, that adds up over a period of time. So yeah, definitely worth checking out. Thank you for what you've shared today. We've only really scratched the surface, but it's a really good taster to get everybody thinking, what's the first steps that I need to take? What can I do to be proactive about now? So yeah, thank you for that. And also, yeah, we can check out your podcast as well, to learn more about what you do as well. So that's all good. Any closing thoughts that you wanted to share just before we wrap this episode up?
I would say do something today that puts you where you want to be tomorrow.
Absolutely. I like finishing on something profound. Yeah, I think that's really good. I could quite easily waffle now and say something that isn't as profound, but I won't. So thank you again, Jamie. Really appreciate your time and everything that you shared today. For everybody listening, we will catch you next time. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to Yeukai Business Show. We will be back to bring you more episodes with success stories and advice straight from the experts. Want more? Check out www.yukaibusinessshow.com. Get your free trial of our virtual assistant service today. Just visit www.worldoutsourcingsolutions.com. Quote WOS18 or send us an email at support@worldoutsourcingsolutions.com.